Good morning. In today's headlines, this morning, Hamas has launched 120 rockets toward two Israeli cities as Israel's military says it's retaken control of all communities around Gaza. We have information from the ground.
And the U.S. is sending ships and aircraft closer to Israel's coast. We speak to an expert on the ground.
A crisis in Israel and no U.S. Speaker of the House. Can aid be sent? How will the surprise attack and President Biden's actions before and after affect voters in the upcoming election? We get some insight from a political analyst.
The conflict in the Middle East could bring in some changes to the oil market. How will it affect prices for Americans and for how long? We speak to NTD business host Don Ma to learn more.
The UAW voted to strike against another vehicle maker, and it will affect about 4,000 workers. We have the details.
And a young artist in Taiwan who loves making pottery. He shares his passion for both the craft and the traditional values behind it. Good morning. Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Evelyn Lee. Today is Monday, October 9th, and we want to start out by saying that our hearts go out to all the victims of the violence in the Middle East. That includes, of course, the Israelis from the terrorist attack and the Palestinian civilians.
Yes, and definitely, hopefully they can bring resolve to this conflict soon so that the hostages can be returned safely and effectively, and that includes reports of American hostages as well.
Right. And now we're starting off with the updates on the weekend's terror attacks. So hundreds have died in the devastating surprise attack from the Hamas terrorist group. This morning, Hamas has launched 120 rockets toward two Israeli cities in response to Israeli airstrikes.
And after more than 48 hours of fighting, Israel's military says it has retaken control of all communities around Gaza. And its defense minister says he's given an order for Gaza's complete siege.
Israel formally declared war against the terrorist organization yesterday. The country's defense forces called up 100,000 reserve troops. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said yesterday that the U.S. is sending ships and aircraft closer to Israel's coast. Several U.S. citizens are believed to have been killed in the attacks. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is still verifying the deaths, along with reports of U.S. hostages. Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs said that U.S. citizens are among those being held. Lawmakers, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, say at least 4 are believed dead and expect the death toll to rise. A White House National Security Council spokesperson also confirmed yesterday several U.S. citizens were killed. A Hamas spokesperson told BBC that Iran helped in its attack.
A 2020 U.S. State Department report found that Iran was providing up to $100 million to terrorist groups, including Hamas, each year. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the latest on the situation in Israel and the Gaza Strip.
Israeli tanks and military personnel moved near the Israel-Gaza border on Sunday after joint attacks from terrorist groups Hamas and Hezbollah over the weekend. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, estimates the Palestinian group Hamas has launched over 3,000 rockets since the conflict began Saturday. The barrage was followed by a surprise attack from land and sea, focused on killing and kidnapping. An IDF spokesperson says around 1,000 terrorists took part in the assault. Lebanon's terrorist Iran-backed Hezbollah attacked from the north on Sunday with what it said was in solidarity with the Hammas invasion. Israeli fighter jets, helicopters, and artillery have struck over 1,000 Hamas and Islamic Jihad targets in the Gaza Strip in response. Hamas claims to be holding over 100 hostages, including high-ranking officers. Islamic Jihad says it's holding at least 30. IDF Reserve Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus says over 100,000 Israeli reserve troops have been called up.
They are now organizing and preparing to launch an attack at Hamas in Gaza. And as we speak, we are also striking their military targets inside the Gaza Strip. And so far, we have been able to kill more than 400 terrorists.
Conricus says the number of Israeli military and civilians killed is around 700, the most deaths Israel has had in one day since 1973 in the Yom Kippur War. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Sunday his security cabinet intends to destroy Hamas's ability to govern. As Israel's President Isaac Herzog promised victory, calling the invasion an unforgivable sin led by a murderous terrorist organization and an evil axis based in Iran. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis weighed in on Saturday's Hamas attacks.
Speaking at a Commit to Caucus event in Iowa yesterday, Trump said the attacks on Israel and the war in Ukraine would never have happened if he were president.
Trump posted on Truth Social, calling the attacks an act of savagery that must and will be crushed. The former president blamed the Biden administration, saying President Biden demonstrated weakness that emboldened U.S. adversaries.
Meanwhile, Governor DeSantis likened Saturday's attacks to 9/11. He emphasized that support for Israel was imperative given the magnitude and brutality of the attacks, which have no place in a civilized world. DeSantis added that Israel is a great ally and that the U.S. should stand with Israel in this very dark moment.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has urged China to support Israel following Saturday's deadly attacks by Hamas. Schumer added that he was disappointed at the country's lack of sympathy in light of the horrific attacks. China's foreign ministry responded by calling on both Israel and Palestine to remain calm and to end hostilities to protect civilians. A spokesperson for the ministry said China is extremely concerned about the attacks, adding that the solution to the conflict is for both states to reach an agreement. The ministry also called for establishing an independent state of Palestine. Schumer is leading a bipartisan delegation to Asia, which includes stops in South Korea and Japan. The group is set to meet with CCP regime leader Xi Jinping during a stop in China. And we continue with our coverage on the Israel war. We're bringing in Dor Levinter from our sister media Epoch Israel, live just outside of Tel Aviv. Dor, it's really good to have you. Thank you so much for taking time this morning and coming on. And I understand this attack, everything just came as quite a shock. Now, tell me more about the situation. What was it and is it like for you right now?
Okay, so the situation is quite hard. What's happening right now, and this is the first thing to understand right now in Israel. This is not a normal war. It's not a normal war between two armies. What we are seeing here is one state, the state of Israel, with human beings being attacked by hundreds, maybe more, of, you cannot call this human. It's a terror attack of terrorists coming inside cities, villages, towns, and just murdering many people. So it's quite a shock for the Israeli population. The main question that people ask is, where is the army? Where is the government? Where have they been? People, I interviewed yesterday many survivors from the attack in the southern area of Israel. Many of them told me horrifying stories. And I'm talking about people with children hiding inside their homes, holding the door, hearing terrorists outside trying to butcher them. That's the word. And I'm quoting, they're trying to butcher us. So, yeah, it's quite a shock for the Israeli population. It's not something that we are used to see here. It's not another conflict. It's not another battleground or any war that we've seen before. And the missile is just the missiles, right now, I hope I can finish this talk, between the alarms. But the missiles that we are seeing is just the cherry on top. What's really happening is a terror attack, very organized, very planned, very well planned, trying to butcher civilians, and that is something that we've never seen before. It's quite a shock for the Israeli population right now.
Let me ask, it's interesting to hear about the lack of response. Also, I heard there was especially in the beginning, there was very little clarity of what's really happening. So some talking about the terrorists infiltrating the country. So some were estimating that as many as 1,000 terrorists infiltrated. And but at the same time, the government says they have retaken control of the communities around Gaza. But do you think that this situation with that has been contained inside Israel? Is that ongoing? What do you know?
So this is still ongoing, and actually the information is very unclear. There is a lot of propaganda you can see by Hamas. Also, it's very, I encourage everyone that's watching to watch NTD News and Epoch Time News. We also report from here, from Epoch in Israel, to get verified news, because everything you see on Telegram, many things are not quite true. So the situation right now is that the army is first thing trying to take off the terrorists from the towns and cities inside of Israel. This is the first point, the first act of the army, and the first goal that we are trying to achieve, the Israeli side. And the second side is to attack Hamas bases, Hamas military bases, etc. So this is the two stages that we are now looking at. And there is also another risk. And one risk is coming from the north, from Hezbollah, that might join this act. So this is one risk that the Israeli army and the defense forces are trying to take. And another thing that we saw in latest combats that what happened is that the Arabic Israeli also joined forces with this battle. So we'll have to wait and see if something happened from within or from the north. So this is the situation right now. But it's not over. Even inside Israel, you still see fights going on, and it's not completely over. Another thing is that the wall between Israel and Gaza Strip is not quietly secured. The Israeli army sent their troops, tanks, and air force, but still it's wide open. And we're talking about, when we're talking about the Gaza border, we're talking about just few kilometers from civilian homes and the towns and the cities. So it's not, the time here play a key role. It's very easy to go through in and out. Another fear that right now we're looking at is tunnels that Hamas made between the Gaza Strip and the Israeli towns. So we'll have to wait and see how it's going on, and stay strong.
So amid all of this, what would you say are you what are you most worried about right now? And do you think maybe are you guys looking to the U.S. for what kind of help are you looking to the U.S. to help?
Okay, so the U.S. help that is coming and is on the way is mostly on the strategic level. And the strategic level, it means that when the U.S. interferes, it might prevent the north border to become another part of the war by Hezbollah shooting missiles over Israel. So the U.S. interference mostly is coming to make sure and secure that the fight is focused on the Gaza Strip, and that's also what the army is trying to do, to keep it focused on the Gaza Strip so it won't spread to other parts of the country. That is mostly what's going on. And the main issue here is, the Israelis, this is worse than 9/11. If you compare the number of, I won't say killed, it's murder, the number of murdered people. So it's bigger in terms of population than the 9/11. There were, if I'm not wrong, there were like 3,000 people killed in the 9/11 compared to the population here in Israel. Imagine 20,000. Imagine maybe more. Yeah. So it's something unprecedented and something that we are, we'll have to deal with it. And also moral plays a very key issue here. And that is another thing that we see Hamas is trying to play a psychological war on the social networks and Telegram and other apps.
Right, and I heard from from many Israelis saying that it's such a small and tight-knit community that it definitely hits it hits a large part of the population. So thank you so much. I really hope that you stay safe, and thank you for the updates.
No worries, we'll just keep doing our job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dor.
Stay with us. Can the U.S. send aid to Israel without a speaker? The Biden administration seeks to do so, but officials are unsure if it can without the House. We hear more on this from a political analyst.
And the U.S. is sending ships and aircraft closer to Israel's coast. We have reactions from lawmakers on the attack and how world leaders are reacting.
And protests in New York City and other areas. Protesters gathered to condemn Israel despite the attacks on the country. Those stories coming up after the break.
I use Book a Limo on all my trips. They have drivers everywhere.
I always feel safe when I travel with their chauffeurs, from hello to goodbye.
Checking rates, booking, and managing clients' reservations online is so easy.
The confirmations, trip reminders, and car status updates are great when I'm on the go.
I want my clients to have the best experience during their trip. That's why I've used Book a Limo for the past 30 years.
What's your destination? Book a limo, any car, anywhere.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
Ancient Scandinavians, often referred to as the Vikings, might not have been so simple and barbaric as they've been portrayed for the last decades. In order to understand the Vikings on a deeper level, we need to take a closer look at their original belief system, their earliest ethical principles and worldview, which are revealed in the myths, stories, and prophecies of their times. In many of the Viking stories, we learn about the dangers of corruption of the human soul. And all this ties into how and why the world and humankind eventually degenerates, leading up to the end times and the last battle between good and evil. In this episode, we're going to take a look into the inner world of the ancient Scandinavians and get acquainted with two of their most central tales that reveal their guiding principles for humankind, both for themselves as well as for mankind in modern times.
Welcome back. The crisis in Israel is underscoring the challenge posed by the speaker vacancy as lawmakers weigh their options on Israel aid. This while the Biden administration is put in a tough spot over what some say is a massive intelligence failure surrounding the Hamas surprise attack. We're bringing in Lenny McAllister, a senior fellow at the Commonwealth Foundation, live to discuss this. Good morning, Lenny. It's great to have you with us again.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
We know that the Biden administration is seeking to send aid to Israel, and it's going to try to do so. And House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says it will provide whatever assistance it can, but it's unclear what's going to happen with the House paralyzed. So can the U.S. send aid to Israel right now without a speaker?
There's always ways that the presidency, that chief executive, can get around the purse strings of the government, i.e. the House of Representatives. But it will be difficult, it will be challenging, and it will bring up a very interesting situation with the federal government, which is at the same time that we see the surprise attack and we see Israel be at war, we're still dealing with the situation in Ukraine. And there are going to be some Americans that are going to ask themselves, are we truly interventionists? Are we truly people that will go and help protect democracy around the world? Or are we becoming more isolationist? Are we going to be a nation that says, you know what, These regions should take care of themselves. We have people here at home that have needs. Even though the jobs numbers were okay on Friday, we also know that people still have had a hard time bouncing back from COVID. It's been 3 years. We have a lot of things that are unstable domestically. We can't continue to send foreign aid to these countries because these things seemingly always pop off, and there's going to be some pushback. When you don't have a speaker, that argument only exacerbates from those on either side of the far wings of that type of sentiment.
So let's talk about foreign policy here. Trump was overseeing the Abraham Accord, seeking to normalize relations between Israel and its neighbors. And then the Biden administration wanted to continue to normalize those. But this terrorist attack here, it may be disrupting this type of normalization, according to Secretary of State Antony Blinken. So do you think that voters are going to look at the Biden administration's actions both before with the unfreezing of these Iranian funds for the prisoner swap and then after with this supposed intelligence failure when they go to the polls in 2024?
I think what's going to end up happening is it's going to remain polarized. The people that are supporting of the Biden administration are going to say that the president did what they could. If it's a surprise attack for the Americans, it's also a surprise attack for the Israelis and other allies of Israel, which is a fact. Nobody expected this attack. There are initial reports coming out that the attackers used alternative means to get around the intelligentsia that would be out there. Everybody was caught off guard. So to lay this at the feet of the Biden administration might be a little unfair. At the same time, we continue to see these blunders. I think that when you talk about a Senator Biden that came on the Obama ticket, the whole reason why he was supposed to come on the ticket was to add that foreign relations experience. And if you look at what happened with him as vice president, the withdrawal from the Middle East led to the rise of ISIS, all the way through to now, which is the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the problems there, and now this gap in intelligence that helped lead to this surprise attack. There's going to be a record that somebody on the Republican side can run against and say, for somebody that's been in Washington since 1972, he doesn't do this foreign affairs thing very well, and we don't need 4 more years of this.
So let's look at the House here. Do you think that this surprise attack is going to affect the Speaker selection process?
I don't know. I think that the people in the House of Representatives are focused on the people in the House of Representatives. They're not even focused on the American people, much less being focused on something that's going on in Israel or even in Ukraine. They're still caught in their talking points. They're still stuck in talking within their silos. And as a result, I don't suspect that there's going to be a compromise deal just for the sake of getting on with the business of Congress, getting on with the business of how do we support our allies, getting on with the business of how do we support democracy around the world, and how do we continue to be the United States and all that we're supposed to be for other countries as well as for ourselves. I think we're going to continue to see partisan fighting in silos, and this is going to remain nasty, unfortunately, for hours and days to come.
Right, and the House can't do much because the Speaker pro tem, he can only really just recognize Speaker nominations and not do much else beyond that. So what's next here, Lenny?
I think it's going to be continued fighting. I think that at some point in time, they're either going to try to jam through Jim Jordan as the new Speaker of the House, or there's going to have to be a compromise candidate. Now, what might be interesting and ironic is the fact that we might finally see a little bit of compromise, or we might see another 10, 11, 12, 13 rounds of voting on a speaker once again, because there's going to be so much horse trading going on. How the House of Representatives responds to who is the next speaker will tell us how much they're willing to work together. If you see what we saw in January, it's going to just be more fighting going into 2024 with a dysfunctional House of Representatives, and that will be very unfortunate for the American people.
Well, it's really great hearing your analysis. Lenny McAllister at the Commonwealth Foundation, thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Congressman Dan Goldman and Senator Cory Booker were both in Israel at the time of the Hamas attacks over the weekend. Senator Booker was in Israel to speak at the Abraham Accord Summit on regional economic integration. Representative Feldman was there with his family attending a bar mitzvah. Both were accompanied by staff members. Everyone has now made it out safely. European leaders and others around the world are reacting to the Hamas attack on Israel. NTD's Danny Monahan has more on that.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says now is not the time for equivocation.
Hamas and the people who support Hamas are fully responsible for this appalling act of terror, for the murder of civilians and for the kidnapping of innocent people, including children.
Sunak vowed the UK's steadfast support and said terrorism will not prevail. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen spoke on the phone with Israeli President Isaac Herzog. She offered the EU's full support. She also posted on X, "I unequivocally condemn the attack carried out by Hamas terrorists against Israel. It is terrorism in its most despicable form." German Chancellor Olaf Scholz wrote on X, "We are deeply shocked by the rocket fire from Gaza and the escalating violence. Germany condemns these attacks by Hamas and stands by Israel." The Israeli UN ambassador also reacted to the attacks.
These animal-like terrorists broke into homes, gathered entire families into rooms, and shot them point blank, as if they were stomping on insects.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said that Australia unequivocally condemns the attack on Israel by Hamas.
Hamas bear the responsibility for this. Of course, this was a shock attack that was obviously very well planned and I think has shocked the world.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wrote on X that Canada unequivocally condemns Hamas's barbaric, brutal terror attacks and reaffirms its support for Israel's right to defend itself. He called for the immediate release of those being held hostage and demanded they be treated in accordance with international law. Ukrainian President Zelensky posted on X that today's terrorist attack on Israel was well planned and the entire world knows which sponsors of terrorism could have endorsed and enabled its organization. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida wrote on X, quote, "Japan strongly condemns the attacks which severely harmed innocent civilians. I express my condolences to the bereaved families and heartfelt sympathies to the injured." Saudi Arabia called for an immediate halt to the escalation between the two sides. The oil-rich country also called for a two-state solution to foster peace in the region. Iran congratulated Palestinian fighters, saying, "We will stand by the Palestinian fighters until the liberation of Palestine and Jerusalem." The country's state television showed parliament members rising from their seats to chant, "Death to Israel." Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Biden condemned the Hamas terrorist attack in a statement on Saturday. He says Israel has a right to defend itself and declared rock-solid and unwavering support from the U.S.
But some Republicans are criticizing the administration's decision to release $6 billion in frozen Iranian funds as part of a recent prisoner swap. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on that and reactions to the Israel-Hamas war.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Sunday that Iran has not been able to spend a single dollar of the $6 billion in funds unfrozen in a U.S.-Iran prisoner exchange in September.
The account is closely regulated by the U.S. Treasury Department, so it can only be used for things like food, medicine, medical equipment.
House Foreign Affairs Chief Mike McCall says he's concerned about the $6 billion in lifted sanctions.
And I don't think it played a part in this event, but it certainly could play a part in any future terror activities.
McCall and his panel's ranking Democrat, Gregory Meeks, are pushing for the immediate passage of a resolution pledging support for Israel. He says there's no time to wait with China and Iran watching and intends to get it to the floor by unanimous consent even if a speaker is not in place.
And what kind of message are we sending to our adversaries?
Democratic Senator Joe Manchin on X called the attack appalling and pledged commitment to Israel. Senator Chris Murphy urged lawmakers to set aside politics and show support. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise called for the Biden administration to be held accountable for what he called appeasement of Hamas terrorists. House Homeland Security Republicans said on X they are closely monitoring the situation and its implications for Homeland Security. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered at Times Square in New York City yesterday in the wake of the attacks on Israel.
Protesters expressed their opposition to U.S. support of Israel after Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin voiced support by saying the U.S. will send multiple military ships and aircraft closer to Israel.
I'm here to send a message that the Palestinian people are not alone and that the people of North America, of the United States, do not consent to the United States government giving unconditional aid to the Zionist settler state of Israel.
Pro-Israel and pro-Palestine supporters faced each other, chanting slogans at Times Square. Some protesters carried banners saying "End U.S. aid" and "Resistance is not terrorism." New York Governor Kathy Hochul on Saturday condemned plans for such demonstrations, calling them morally repugnant.
Meanwhile, protests also occurred in multiple U.S. cities, including at Israeli consulates and embassies in San Francisco and Atlanta, as well as in Canada and Europe.
And coming up after the break, the conflict unfolding in the Middle East could be the cause of big changes in the oil market. Find out more from NTD Business host Don Ma.
Org today.
Bars should lock up criminals, not your back. Don't get the shakedown from lesser spine surgeons who utilize screws, rods, and disc replacements. At Bonatti, no hardware is ever used. 65% of patients come to us after receiving failed back and neck surgery at other facilities. With 98.75% patient-reported satisfaction, you don't have to be a prisoner to your pain. Bonatti succeeds where others fail. Visit AskBonatti.com.
It's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/therightseat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
It's good to have you back with us. It's been more than 2 days since the Hamas terrorist group launched the surprise attack with thousands of rockets and sent fighters across the border. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the terrible violence over the weekend.
The Hamas assault shocked Israelis, displaying an unexpected level of sophistication and coordination. Using motorcycles, pickup trucks, and even paragliders and speedboats, Hamas terrorists penetrated Israeli towns near the Gaza Strip and began killing and kidnapping civilians, including women and young children. They also launched thousands of rockets into Israeli cities starting early Saturday morning. Some of the worst violence occurred at a music festival called Nature Party. Authorities say around 260 people were killed there. Police can be seen trying to evacuate people, seemingly still unaware of the danger. Hamas terrorists reportedly shot at people trying to escape. A terrorist here takes a hostage. Festival goer Noah Argamani was taken hostage by the terror group. Her boyfriend is also taken, led on foot. A festival aftermath video shows the roadside strewn with shot up and wrecked cars. A local resident of a kibbutz invaded by Hamas fighters described what was happening on Saturday.
The IDF, after at least 7 hours of being locked down in our safe rooms, the IDF finally arrived and started going through the kibbutz, house by house, bush by bush. They have to clear everything out. They've killed 9 terrorists so far.
This man's wife and 2 daughters were taken hostage by terrorists.
It's not simple to know that your 2 babies and your wife, your entire family, the most precious thing you have, is captive.
Families of missing Israelis called for answers from the government at a news conference on Sunday. This mother of a missing daughter spoke of a painful phone call.
At around 10:15 a.m., she called and said, "Mom, they're shooting at us. The car is hit. We are all wounded. Mom, I'm bleeding. Mom, I'm scared. I'm going to die."
Israeli police released video of hostages after a gun battle in southern Israel on Sunday. The video showed people, including children, wearing only underwear with Israeli forces. Israel was quick to respond to the invasion with its own missile attacks on the Gaza Strip. Israeli air forces attacked locations thought to be associated with Hamas. The health ministry of the Palestinian Authority reported on Sunday that over 400 Palestinians had been killed and over 2,000 wounded by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza since Saturday. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
What will be the impact of the conflict in the Middle East to the U.S.? Here with us live is NTD business host Don Ma. Don, good morning. Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, good morning, Kevin. Great to be here.
So will there be a noticeable impact to the U.S. economy here?
Kevin, you know, it's terrible what's happening over there, but I think a lot will depend on whether this conflict is contained or if it widens. But I think for now, there will be some short-term impact and volatility to markets, which could impact our portfolio. If the conflict remains limited to Palestinians and Israelis, it could be unlikely that we have any deep impacts to financial markets. But, fundamentally, Kevin, what we need to ask ourselves is, when it comes to whether this will hurt the U.S. economy, is whether this is going to disrupt supply chains, whether it's going to hurt consumers, is this going to hurt company earnings? And Kevin, in most cases, the answer is no. Of course, nothing is for certain, and we just have to wait and see if the conflict spreads.
Yeah, those are very good points that you raised there. And then with this conflict happening in a major oil-producing region, what's going to be the impact of that?
Yeah, of course. The danger here is whether the disruption to oil supply will happen. But, for this conflict, like I said earlier, to have a meaningful and lasting impact on oil markets, there has to be a sustained reduction in oil supply or transport. And we just haven't seen that just yet. But still, there have been some reactions from investors in the oil market. Brent crude and WTI both went up a few percent. Any sustained increase in oil prices would, in fact, act as a tax on consumers and could add to inflationary pressures in the U.S. here. So we have to keep that in mind as well.
Right, and the Financial Times reported that Brent crude jumped up to $89 a barrel, given that these are concerns that this would affect output in these oil-producing countries there. And of course, many people looking on may think that there's a need to increase domestic production to be shielded from these kinds of effects.
Yeah, of course, you're absolutely right about that. But it still remains to be seen whether this conflict will spread to major oil-producing countries as well, because right now Israel is not one of those countries.
Yeah, so do you have anything else for us, Don?
Yeah, so on top of what I mentioned earlier, many international airlines have suspended flights to Tel Aviv due to the situation there. And the list of airlines include United, Delta, American Airlines, and Air France. Delta said they were watching the situation to make schedule adjustments as needed, but flights have been canceled into this week. United did have 2 scheduled flights from Israel to the United States over the weekend, but they said service would remain suspended until conditions allow them to resume. Other than these, that's all from me this morning.
Yes, travelers definitely need to be aware, and of course, hopefully those Americans that are reportedly being taken hostage can be freed soon. So Don Ma, host of NTD Business, thank you.
Thank you.
And now we are heading to Jane Werrell in the UK for some short headlines from around the world.
Morning, Evelyn and Kevin. The death toll from strong earthquakes that shook western Afghanistan has risen to over 2,400. About 6 villages have been destroyed and hundreds of civilians have been buried under the debris. It's one of the deadliest earthquakes to strike the country in 2 decades. Turkey says it has captured over 2,500 fugitives as part of a nationwide counter-terrorism operation. It launched after Kurdish militants detonated a bomb near government buildings a week ago. Turkey is targeting the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party militia and the Syrian Kurdish YPG militia. The PKK claimed responsibility for the bombing. In Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz's centre-left coalition was dealt a sharp rebuke in 2 key states yesterday. Voters in Bavaria and Hesse boosted the opposition centre and right-wing parties. Analysts said this will further stoke tensions in the 3-party coalition. The Kremlin said Western taxpayers are starting to ask questions about how their money is being spent in helping Ukraine's armed forces. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov today said that sooner or later, Western support for Kyiv would start to decline. Government lawyers will today tell Britain's top court it should overturn a ruling which declared a plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda as unlawful. In June, London's Court of Appeal said Rwanda could not be treated as a safe third country. An outcome is not expected until the end of the year and could have far-reaching consequences. That's all from me. Back to you both.
Thank you very much, Jane. And our thoughts are with the victims of the Afghan earthquake.
Yeah, and aid workers are still providing relief to those people in the quake-stricken areas in Herat province, providing food supplies.
Right, and the UN said the emergency aid has been delivered to people in the Herat province now.
That's good.
Stay tuned to get 2 rolls of alien tape free. You wouldn't stick your mother-in-law on the wall, but you could with alien tape. It just sticks. Just peel and stick to make anything stay in place quick. Brick, pavers, marble, tile, plastic, even leather. Nothing works better than alien tape. You wouldn't stick your fishbowl on a moving car, but you could with alien tape. The secret is nano-stick technology that grabs and locks on to secure one side of the surface to the other. Alien tape secures in seconds, then twist, pull, and rinse to reuse. Call or go online to get your first roll of alien tape for just $19.99, plus shipping and processing. But to make this deal really stick, we'll give you 2 more rolls absolutely free. You get 3 rolls of alien tape for one low price. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-490-1364 or go to tryalientape.com. So call 1-800-490-1364 or order online at tryalientape.com.
Hi everyone watching at home. We're here to remind you that if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have live agents available right now to answer your questions and tell you how much your case is potentially worth. Hi, I'm Gina Bellich, here with spokesman and TV personality Tom Mustin with us in the Help Center. So Tom, phones are really busy over there. Tell us what kind of calls you're seeing.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me here in the call center with you. We always enjoy talking to the viewers and getting folks the compensation that they deserve. You know, we're seeing calls about all kinds of accidents, but the most common by far has been car accidents. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person. They'll answer any questions you have and tell you if you have a case and how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks at home, you heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now.
My name's Jen Marshall. I've been playing professional football in a women's league for 3 years now. We're about 3.5 weeks out of my second surgery now. I had no pain whatsoever, no tingling, no numbness, and I felt incredible. I'm able to do pretty much anything. He doesn't want me pushing it too much, but I'm able to do, assisted pull-ups now. I'm riding a bike. I'm walking continuously at an incline on treadmills. I can do push-ups again. I can get out of bed, no problem. You're in great hands.
Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Welcome back. Large businesses in California will have to disclose a wide range of emissions under a new state law. Governor Gavin Newsom signed SB 253 on Saturday. The law requires more than 5,300 California companies that make more than $1 billion annually to report their direct and indirect emissions. That includes emissions from operating a building or store and activities like employee business, traveling, and transporting their products. Proponents of the law say it will push companies to reduce emissions contributing to climate change. However, the California Chamber of Commerce says it will create problems for companies that don't have the know-how to report their indirect emissions. They also say the federal government is weighing similar rules, which would make double the work if those standards are adopted. Under the new law, companies must disclose their direct emissions beginning in 2026 and their indirect emissions in 2027.
Staying in California, Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill on Saturday that decriminalized the possession and use of several hallucinogenic drugs, including psychedelic mushrooms. Newsom championed legalizing cannabis in 2016, but he said more needs to be done before California decriminalizes the hallucinogens. In a statement Saturday, he recommended setting up treatment guidelines, dosing information, and medical clearance showing no underlying psychoses. Supporters of the bill include veterans who use psychedelics and treat trauma and other illnesses, but opponents say any benefits the drugs may have are still largely unknown. Parents groups worried the law would have made it easier for children and young people to access the drugs. Even if California made the bill a law, the drugs would still be illegal under federal law.
We're going to switch up gears now and bring you some of the latest headlines. Police say senior vice president of Exxon's shale oil and gas business was arrested for sexual assault last week. David Scott was charged with second-degree felony assault. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in jail. An Exxon spokesman said he's not continuing with work responsibilities while the criminal investigation is ongoing. And West Maui is open again for tourism exactly 2 months after the devastating wildfires. Residents are divided about the decision. Some want more time to come to terms with the devastation, and others want to get the economy rolling again. Maui's county mayor office said his office is trying to strike a balance between the two groups.
The United Auto Workers Union rejected a new contract offer from Volvo Group, the owner of Mack trucks. The new contract was voted down by over 70% of UAW rank and file members. They will now head for the picket lines starting this morning. The strike affects about 4,000 workers at plants in Florida, Maryland, and Pennsylvania.
Videos of a male middle schooler who allegedly identifies as a girl violently attacking several girls at a school in Oregon recently went viral. A school board meeting tonight is expected to draw a lot of concerned parents who are reportedly fed up with the school's lax discipline policies. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with the founder of the Free Oregon movement, who is also a parent from the school. And a warning, some of the footage coming up might be disturbing for some viewers.
Hazelbrook Middle School in the Tigard-Tualatin School District employs a system of discipline called restorative justice. That means talking things out instead of punishment. The school bully meets the person they have bullied, along with a mediator, usually a teacher. The mediator asks questions like, "What happened? How did it happen?" or "What can we do to make it right?" The victim discusses how they feel about being bullied. Supporters point to big drops in school suspensions, while critics say that's just due to a lack of consequences for misbehavior, not improved behavior. Founder of the Free Oregon movement, Ben Edel, says such policies have led to a huge uptick in school violence and chaos throughout the school. According to Edel, children don't listen unless you take something away that's very valuable to them.
That's just what it comes down to. If it's like you're losing your iPad for 24 hours, they act right. They shape up. You don't have to smack them around, but if you take away their Nintendo Switch or their iPad or their Oculus, they're best to listen up. And so it's the fear of losing something that actually teaches young children how to act right.
Edel says the school has also implemented policies that favor some students over others.
Anybody who decides, if I'm a boy and I wear girls' clothes, I get protected. I get special perks. I get to go on special field trips. I can leave class at any time and go to what they call Club Med at the school, which is a nice chill room with games and books and low light, and they can hang out and do whatever they want to do. Anytime they feel stressed.
The male student in the Attacke video was reportedly arrested after the recent incident, but Edel says the boy also assaulted 2 girls at the end of the last school year and there was no disciplinary action. According to Edel, what he calls the school district's heavy emphasis on sexuality and gender is wrong.
But would you, as a school district and as a state, implement curriculum and policy that not only tells kids from as early as kindergarten that you can decide your own gender, and then rewards you as you get older to decide to be a different gender, that there's not going to be complete and total chaos in your schools.
Edel says the issues with restorative justice are not just in schools. The Free Oregon founder says both teachers and police are rendered ineffective by such policies.
They can write referral after referral after referral and nothing happens. It's the very same situation we have in the city of Portland, where the Portland police say, why would we continue arresting people when the district attorney, Mike Schmidt, doesn't prosecute anyone? So we've got this restorative justice policy platform in our schools, and we have the restorative justice policy platform in our cities. And it's total chaos everywhere because restorative justice means no discipline.
Meanwhile, Edel says state laws like Senate Bill 1521, which prevent local school boards from firing school superintendents, have reduced the ability of local communities to fight back.
Our state is governed and operated by people hell-bent to destroy our most valuable institutions. And it's coming to a state near you.
The school board meeting will be held on Monday, October 9th. Parent organizers are calling for a zero-tolerance policy for physical violence at schools, equal application of discipline for all students, and for the school to stop teaching gender ideology in the classroom. NTD reached out to the Tigard-Tualatin School District. We are still waiting to hear back from them. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Shortly after the alleged assault, the Tigard-Tualatin School District issued a joint statement with the Tualatin Police Department and the Washington County Juvenile Department. It assures students and parents that measures have been taken to ensure their safety at Hazelbrook Middle School and all TTSD schools. Still to come, a young artist in Taiwan who loves making pottery. He shares his passion for both the craft and the traditional values behind it, so stay tuned for that story.
I hope that we recover as many service members as possible while we're here.
No man or woman will be left behind.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Two neurosurgeons couldn't figure out anything that was wrong with me or what I would need surgery for. Dr. Benatti, without even seeing me, knew I was hurting, knew they could help me. First time I came in here was Monday, and today is Thursday. I've had 2 surgeries and am doing fantastic. I'm still in shock that I can walk. That's all within 4 days.
Benatti succeeds where others fail.
It's a painting that is peaceful. There's a lot of beauty in it. And you forget about whatever you might be worried about.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
Good to have you back with us. And I don't know about you, but Evelyn, I'm ready to be inspired.
Oh yeah, it's always good to be able to count on some positivity here at this point in our show. So in today's Inspired Story, we hear from a pottery artist in Taiwan. The young artist has found his purpose in creating ceramic wares infused with traditional values.
30-year-old Su Tingjia was born into a family of teachers and artists in Taiwan. His passion for making pottery grew after taking pottery classes in college.
The pottery teacher was teaching at my university, and I learned a lot from the teacher, including approaches to art and stories about life. The teacher really brought a lot to me, and I learned a lot. I enjoyed the pottery class and liked this trade because it's a traditional craft.
Su tells NTD he feels that pottery contains a lot of traditions that people can still appreciate. He sets up his own studio amid the 2020 pandemic, and he's now expanding his business. A thought-provoking artwork Su created was an adult lion covered with wounds and scars and a lion cub that is white and beautiful. He says the adult lion could represent how we humans grow in society. He wants people to reflect on their lives and whether their chosen path is what they originally wanted.
Eventually, you mature and become formidable and grow into your ideal self. But during that process, you will get hurt. And for some people, when they get to the end, they may have forgotten about their initial intent. And I think, comparatively speaking, the lion cub represents a state of pureness and friendliness.
Su says he endeavors to fulfill the ultimate goal of being a traditional artist, breathing the soul and the inherent meaning into each artwork. He says a work of art should have its soul, what it wants to express. He believes people should get an insight into that when they look at any art piece.
I can feel the effort that was put into making the pottery. I can feel its quality and its weight. And those are the details omitted by the factories during mass production. For example, certain glaze colors may look pretty, but they cannot be produced in factories. The glaze color and the quality of the mud may affect the taste when you use the pottery to drink tea, for example. When you mass produce them industrially, there are things that are sacrificed, and I think it's very disappointing.
Apart from making pottery, most of Su's work now offers in-person pottery classes. Su says he enjoys creating art, and he's especially happy when people put his artwork into daily use so they can accompany them in their lives.
Wow, it really does look amazing.
Yeah, there's just something about those handmade products. You know, I actually have some antique furniture in my place, and it really is nice, the wood grain and all the different decals they have on there.
It is different. I saw this timeline ones of design, and everything is getting more and more minimalistic. So it's losing character, interestingly enough, but that's something else we need to dive into, and we do not have time for that. So right now, we're starting the second part of our broadcast. Updates on the weekend's terror attacks in Israel. Find out how officials are responding to the rising death toll.
The U.S. has been building relations in the Middle East recently. We bring in an expert to learn more about what the attacks could mean for diplomacy in the region.
Protesters in multiple cities around the world gathered to voice their support for Palestine. The protests come in the wake of the terrorist attacks on Israel.
Pressure as the House of Representatives is still looking for a new speaker. Two GOP candidates are set to make their pitches to fellow Republicans later today.
And the floods in Libya uncovered more ruins of an ancient city. Archaeologists are looking to create a plan to help restore the site.
To all of you who just joined us, good morning. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, I'm Evelyn Lee, and we're going to dive right into our top news today, the Israel-Hamas war. Hamas launched 120 rockets into two Israeli cities this morning. The Palestinian terrorist group says it was in response to Israeli airstrikes in Gaza.
More than 2,500 injuries tied to the Hamas attack have now been reported in Israel.
And the death toll just continues to climb, with at least 800 estimated to have been killed in Israel and 500 in Gaza.
Israel Defense Forces have called up to 100,000 reserve troops. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said yesterday that the U.S. military is sending ships and aircraft closer to Israel's coast.
At least 4 U.S. citizens are believed to have been killed in the attacks. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is still verifying the deaths, along with reports of U.S. hostages.
EU foreign ministers will meet to address the situation in Israel on Tuesday, and meanwhile, Schumer expressed his disappointment over China's response to the attacks on Israel during a meeting in Beijing today. He urges China's Xi Jinping to stand with the people of Israel.
A mother living in Israel learned of her daughter's kidnapping from watching a viral video.
The woman, Shani Lok, was attending a concert when Hamas terrorists arrived, killing hundreds and kidnapping others.
In an interview with CNN's Anderson Cooper, Shani's mother, Ricarda Lok, said when rockets started exploding, she spoke with her daughter. Shani told her mom she was rushing to her car to leave the festival immediately. It was the last thing Ricarda heard from her daughter.
A few hours later, the mother received a video from friends. She recognized Shani from her hair and tattoo.
We identified our daughter on a pickup truck in the back, lying on the floor with militant men around her and pushing her down and with armed, and they were driving into the Gaza Strip with her. So we saw that they were in the Gaza Strip already. I hope the video is, as you know, it looks very bad, but I still have hope. I hope that they don't take bodies for negotiations, and I hope that she's still alive somewhere. We don't have anything else to hope for, so I try to believe, yeah.
Shani and Ricarda are German citizens. Ricarda says she is in contact with the German embassy, but is having trouble getting updates on her daughter's situation.
Yeah, our hearts again are with the victims.
Yes. And it's been more than 2 days since Hamas terrorist groups launched the surprise attack with thousands of rockets and sent fighters across the border. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the terrible violence over the weekend.
The Hamas assault shocked Israelis, displaying an unexpected level of sophistication and coordination. Using motorcycles, pickup trucks, and even paragliders and speedboats, Hamas terrorists penetrated Israeli towns near the Gaza Strip and began killing and kidnapping civilians, including women and young children. They also launched thousands of rockets into Israeli cities starting early Saturday morning. Some of the worst violence occurred at a music festival called Nature Party. Authorities say around 260 people were killed there. Police can be seen trying to evacuate people, seemingly still unaware of the danger. Hamas terrorists reportedly shot at people trying to escape. A terrorist here takes a hostage. Festival goer Noah Argamani was taken hostage by the terror group. Her boyfriend is also taken, led on foot. A festival aftermath video shows the roadside strewn with shot up and wrecked cars. A local resident of a kibbutz invaded by Hamas fighters described what was happening on Saturday.
The IDF, after at least 7 hours of being locked down in our safe rooms, the IDF finally arrived and started going through the kibbutz, house by house, bush by bush. They have to clear everything out. They've killed 9 terrorists so far.
This man's wife and 2 daughters were taken hostage by terrorists.
It's not simple to know that your 2 babies and your wife, your entire family, the most precious thing you have, is captive.
Families of missing Israelis called for answers from the government at a news conference on Sunday. This mother of a missing daughter spoke of a painful phone call.
At around 10:15 a.m., she called and said, "Mom, they're shooting at us. The car is hit. We are all wounded. Mom, I'm bleeding. Mom, I'm scared. I'm going to die."
Israeli police released video of hostages after a gun battle in southern Israel on Sunday. The video showed people, including children, wearing only underwear with Israeli forces. Israel was quick to respond to the invasion with its own missile attacks on the Gaza Strip. Israeli air forces attacked locations thought to be associated with Hamas. The health ministry of the Palestinian Authority reported on Sunday that over 400 Palestinians had been killed and over 2,000 wounded by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza since Saturday. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And now we take a look at some U.S. reactions to the terror in Israel. President Biden condemned the Hamas terrorist attack in a statement on Saturday.
He says Israel has a right to defend itself and declared rock-solid and unwavering support from the U.S.
House Foreign Affairs Chair Mike McCall and the panel's ranking Democrat Gregory Meeks are pushing for the immediate passage of a resolution pledging support for Israel. He says there's no time to wait with China and Iran watching and intends to get it to the floor by unanimous consent, even if a speaker is not in place.
Democratic Senator Joe Manchin on X called the attack appalling and pledged commitment to Israel, while Senator Chris Murphy urged lawmakers to set aside politics and show support.
House Majority Leader Steve Scalise called for the Biden administration to be held accountable for what he called appeasement of Hamas terrorists.
House Homeland Security Republicans said on X they are closely monitoring the situation and its implications for Homeland Security.
Dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered at Times Square in New York City yesterday in the wake of the attacks on Israel.
Protesters expressed their opposition to U.S. support of Israel after Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the U.S. will send multiple military ships and aircraft closer to Israel.
I'm here to send a message that the Palestinian people are not alone and that the people of North America, of the United States, do not consent to the United States government giving unconditional aid to the Zionist settler state of Israel.
Pro-Israel and pro-Palestine supporters faced each other chanting slogans at Times Square. Some protesters carried banners saying "End U.S. aid" and "Resistance is not terrorism." New York Governor Kathy Hochul on Saturday condemned plans for such demonstrations, calling them morally repugnant.
Meanwhile, protests also erupted in multiple U.S. cities, including at Israeli consulates and embassies in San Francisco and Atlanta, as well as in Canada and Europe.
So we want to bring in Aryeh Lightstone, a former senior advisor to U.S. ambassador to Israel, to do a deep dive into the connections between the Middle Eastern countries and the recent attacks. Now, good morning, Aryeh. Iran has been reportedly involved in the planning of the attack, and it was approved at a meeting in Beirut, so that is in Lebanon. So tell me more about the significance of their involvement there.
Well, the Biden administration hasn't yet said that Iran is involved, but Iran has told you that they're involved, Hamas has told you that they're involved, and Hezbollah has told you that they're involved. So there's been a debate in terms of where the next nexus of evil will come from. You don't need to guess. It all stems from Iran. Now, whether it's Hamas in Gaza or Hezbollah in Lebanon, they're all getting their directions from Iran itself, and that's where the funding, the training, and the coordination comes from.
Right, and so Lebanon, Hezbollah being in the north. So how can the U.S. help deter a multi-front attack on Israel here, considering that the Hezbollah have already been launching missiles?
Right, so I want to say sort of two things. Number one is the Biden administration has made a complete and total mess of the Middle East by a process of appeasement of Iran. From day number one with Maui, who was running apparently some form of pro-Iran operation with inside the United States of America's government, to the run to get back into the JCPOA, the so-called Iran deal, to the recent negotiation for hostages and the paying of $6 billion. Let's put all of that aside for a moment. What matters is what the next step is, and credit to the Biden administration sending a carrier, an aircraft carrier, the Ford, into the Mediterranean close to Israel, I think will be a deterrent. I certainly pray that it will be deterrent, that this will not turn into a multi-front war, and that the Lebanese and Hezbollah in Lebanon will understand that there will not be a Lebanon if indeed Hezbollah joins this fight.
And so I want to touch on something that you said earlier about the $6 billion there. I should mention also that U.S. officials say that this money has not been moved yet and that it's basically not, it has nothing to do with the attacks. But there's others that also say that Iran is relying on their oil, which they're mostly selling to China right now, basically that as an income. So tell me more about your take on this issue.
Yeah, in the history of dumb comments, the comment by this administration saying that they're not using this money for promoting terrorism and people not questioning them on that, money is fungible. If I get $6 billion in one pocket, that means the money that I have in the other pocket can be used on other things. They say this with tremendous confidence and people don't challenge them on it. Anybody who's ever had a bank account before knows that that's not how it works. $6 billion went to Iran. Iran is the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. Therefore, Iran now has $6 billion more to sponsor terrorism. Not coincidentally, weeks afterwards, you have the worst attack ever on the state of Israel. There's a linkage there. In terms of this didn't just happen in the last 2 weeks. This has been planned for months, if not longer. Without a doubt, Iran is stronger because of their ability to sell to China and the United States of America's inability to enforce the sanctions that we've had against Iran, allowing that to have this slippage. It shouldn't be called slippage, it's just dereliction, allowing Iran to sell to China. And if you look broadly at the world, if we can zoom out for a little bit, that which is good for Iran is good for China and good for Russia. That which is bad for Iran is bad for China and is bad for Russia. And so now we have two different fronts as Americans in Israel and Ukraine, where we're allowing the bad guys to win because we aren't assertive or strong enough.
Well, everything very alarming, but thank you so much, Ari Lightstone, former senior advisor to the U.S. ambassador to Israel. I really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Coming up, pressure is mounting as the House of Representatives looks to find a new speaker. Two GOP candidates are vying for the seat. Former President Trump voiced his endorsement. Find out in just a moment.
Shen Yun Symphony Orchestra, coming to Lincoln Center, David Geffen Hall, October 22nd. Tickets at shenyunsymphony.com.
Did you know ESG is impacting every part of your life? From rising gas prices to global food shortages to out-of-control inflation, even losing your freedom of speech and being censored on the internet. It's all being driven by ESG ideology. Who's in control? What can you do about it? Find out in The Shadow State, the first documentary exposing ESG. The ESG movement of governments and corporations operates in the shadows. Only the light of truth can expose it. Watch The Shadow State documentary, streaming now.
Does this look familiar? You probably think this is what owning hearing aids would be like. Let me tell you, there's a better way. The Atom by Audien Hearing. The all-new Audien Atom is the world's first wireless charging hearing aid under $100. The Atom comes with an easy-to-use wireless charging dock. Plus, the Atom has a 22% smaller design, so it's nearly invisible when worn in the ear. That's why we have over 250,000 happy customers. Each pair has a 45-day money-back guarantee, so there is zero risk in trying them.
Call 1-800-918-3109. That's 1-800-918-3109. Call 1-800-918-3109 or go to audienhearing.com to get your pair of Audien Atom hearing aids for only $99.
Jesus of Nazareth.
I'm going to tell everyone.
I was counting on it.
I must say, I am shocked.
This is different.
Get used to different.
What will be next?
Any suggestions?
He gave us even more than we need.
Unbelievable.
What? Do they know what the remarkable thing it is?
They could not believe their ears.
Not too shabby.
It was incredible. Your faith is beautiful.
Good to have you back, everyone. We're staying with the war in Israel, so we're bringing back in Dor Levinter from our sister media, Epoch Israel. He's live just outside of Tel Aviv for the latest update. Good to have you back, Dor. Now, first, I want to see what the updates are from you. The death toll is still climbing, so what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the death toll is actually, it's going to climb. It's going to keep climbing. In the next days, we will see a big raise, we all believe, because what's happening is it's very hard to take control on all the numbers. There are still bodies in the streets in the in the south of Israel, and it's very, very hard to collect everyone and to do this calculation. So it's only estimation. It seems like it's rising in every 50, every 100, it's just, the number is climbing. So today what we are seeing is still, you can see the attacks in the Gaza Strip. Mostly the army trying to, right now, attack military bases, places where you can, you see on the screen right now the missiles over Tel Aviv and going to the entire center of the country and also to the southern places of the country. So what the army trying to do right now is to harm every target they have on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So it's very hard to do, and they just keep doing it. What's different from the other times is that there is no restriction. When Israel declares war, the game is changing. It's a whole new game. It's a whole new ball game. And it's also still something to remember that we have many, many people kidnapped to Gaza. And usually in wars, when you're saying people kidnapped, it's mostly soldiers. But this time we're talking about babies. We're talking about old people. We're talking about women, children. It's very hard. It's a very hard photos, and they are still inside. So this is also something to remember. But right now, Israel has no actually way to negotiate on them. So the number one goal is first to harm Hamas and make them come to Israel begging for negotiations. So this is what's really going on right now. Tonight we had over 500 targets in the Gaza Strip being attacked. We have many soldiers in the southern cities and towns trying to evacuate people and also take control back over the cities and clear the whole area from terrorists.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and,
thank you for that. Thank you for that update. I'm wondering from you, what do you think? How long will this last?
So we're talking about at least weeks, because right now it's just the first strike of Israel. Israel is right now actually focusing on defense. So the next stage, after Israel will clear all the terrorists from its ground and make sure all the towns and cities are safe, probably we are looking at the Israeli military entering the Gaza Strip and trying to conquer enough place, enough distance to make sure that this won't get back, inside the territory of Israel. There is no terrorist coming back. There is no threats over the civilians of the Israeli state. So right now, Israel is mostly focusing on defense, and we're going to see the attack soon in Gaza Strip. It's mostly like that.
So that second stage we still have yet to reach. And well, I wish we had more time to talk about this. Unfortunately, we don't. So thank you so much for your update again. And please stay safe, Dor Levinter.
Sure, thank you.
And pressure in the House of Representatives as the race to fill the House Speaker vacancy heats up.
Many Republicans voiced their sentiment for the House to come together after former Speaker Kevin McCarthy was ousted last week.
The two candidates vying for McCarthy's seat are House Majority Leader Steve Scalise of Louisiana and Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Both are set to make their pitches to fellow Republicans at a closed party conference discussion later today.
This will be followed by a candidate forum tomorrow and an internal election on Wednesday. It's unclear when a full House vote for a new speaker will happen. At the forum, Jordan plans to unveil his plan to address the government funding deadline on November 17th.
And meanwhile, former President Trump has publicly stated he will endorse Jordan as Speaker.
There is added urgency in finding a new House Speaker as the U.S. works to offer support to Israel following Saturday's attacks on the country. And how will the conflict in the Middle East impact the U.S.? NTD Business host Don Ma explains. So will there be a noticeable impact to the U.S. economy here?
Kevin, you know, it's terrible what's happening over there, but I think a lot will depend on whether this conflict is contained or if it widens. But I think for now, there will be some short-term impact and volatility to markets, which could impact our portfolio. If the conflict remains limited to Palestinians and Israelis, it could be unlikely that we have any deep impacts to financial markets. But, fundamentally, Kevin, what we need to ask ourselves is, when it comes to whether this will hurt the U.S. economy, is whether this is going to disrupt supply chains, whether it's going to hurt consumers, is this going to hurt company earnings? And Kevin, in most cases, the answer is no. Of course, nothing is for certain, and we just have to wait and see if the conflict spreads.
Yeah, those are very good points that you raised there. And with this conflict happening in a major oil-producing region, what's going to be the impact of that?
Yeah, of course. The danger here is whether the disruption to oil supply will happen. But, for this conflict, like I said earlier, to have a meaningful and lasting impact on oil markets, there has to be a sustained reduction in oil supply or transport. And we just haven't seen that just yet. But still, there have been some reactions from investors in the oil market. Brent crude and WTI both went up a few percent. Any sustained increase in oil prices would, in fact, act as a tax on consumers and could add to inflationary pressures in the U.S. here. So we have to keep that in mind as well.
So Don Ma, host of NTD Business, thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, we will keep an eye on the developments and we'll bring you more updates on the war in Israel in our noon report with Stephania Cox and Chris Spears. So stay tuned for that.
Yes, and that Iron Dome certainly was very active in repelling this rocket barrage.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, although it can get most of the missiles, some are still getting through. And the question is just, one of the big questions, right? How did Israel, or maybe some are pointing fingers at the U.S. as well, how did this intelligence miss that?
Yeah, and they were just as caught off guard as the Yom Kippur War when Egypt and Syria attacked Israel in the 70s.
Right. Well, we have reached the end of the program, but let's pray that the conflict will not spread, as Dawn has mentioned, and that there will not be any more casualties. This is the end of our program here. We'd love to hear from you as usual. You can write us at goodmorning@ntd.com if you have any feedback or things you would like us to know. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform?
So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.